you so much for agreeing to talk with us this afternoon to celebrate International Day of People with Disability here in Australia and to our many colleagues around the globe. I'd like to start off with a tradition in Australia, an important tradition, to welcome the and to acknowledge the traditional owners of our lands, the many lands of our panellists are sitting on this afternoon. I'm sitting on Gadigal land, part of the Eora Nation, and I wish to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also recognise the Indigenous linkage to the land, sea and waters on which we operate. Today we're so pleased to be part of this broadcast with Purple Space and Valuable 500 to celebrate International Day of People with Disability. It's my pleasure to be talking to three skilled and talented people who work with their employee resource groups to make a difference from the inside out in their organisations. And so I'd like to start off by introducing Michael Patterson and Jacqueline Duncan from the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice. Michael is a Senior Project Officer and who is undertaking their Disability Inclusion Action Plan at the moment. And Jacqueline is the Disability Employment Network Chair. We're also going to hear from Duncan Chu, the Chair of the Victorian Department of, Chair of Victorian Enablers Network, and Duncan works with the Department of Education and Training and is part of the Public Sector Enablers Network. Paul Scantlebury is with us also from EY, and Paul is a Talent Attraction and Acquisition APAC Strategy Implementation Leader and Co-Chair of Oceania Ability Network. So welcome everybody. I'd like to hand over to Michael. I've known Michael for a few years now and have developed great admiration for their tenacity, the way that he's used his smarts to navigate change at the now somewhat larger Department of Communities and Justice. So, Michael, over to you. Tell us about some of the things you've seen change and how your role has changed in to developing the Disability Inclusion Action Plan.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to pick just four highlights for me. The first one was actually becoming energetic. The Den used to be a kind of quiet, sleepy kind of organisation that met 4 times a year, all day, which was an impressive level of commitment. But when I was at the ANN conference in 2018, Kate Nash got up and spoke, and she made me realise that you don't do change 4 times a day, 4 times a year. It's a full-on business. So, yeah, I decided that we better get moving if we actually wanted to see anything happen. In September 2018, I sent out an email to our Disability Employee Network, or DEN members, inviting volunteers to join me to make stuff happen. I was needing help because I was getting exhausted. The 14 people who replied became the Guidance and Action Team, the GAT, and that became the core of the DEN's subsequent energy and activity. It took almost 12 months for the group to wrangle itself into a cohesive and passionate body, as Jackie will remember. Quite a lot of passion. And, and during that time, I really had to resist the temptation to intervene too much. I was absolutely committed that the GAT had to develop its own character and not be dependent on or overly influenced by me. I was starting to think succession planning. The next big thing for me was the setting up of roundtables. I was inspired by the Australian Public Service Commission's model of sessions between executives and staff with disability. And at a meeting with the department secretary and the then executive DEN champion, Anne Skews, I proposed a roundtable in which 6 DEN members would talk to the department's board about being a member of staff in the department, or a member of staff with disability in the department. That happened on the 28th of February 2018, and that became the foundation for open and honest conversations between the DEN and the department's executive about the challenges faced by staff with disability. And it also became the first of a series of similar events which engaged executives around the department and led to a greater awareness of disability issues. One of the things that I said at that first roundtable was that for me, every executive had an implicit duty to be a champion for staff with disability and should therefore be a disability champion. Up to that stage, we just had one disability champion. That led to the development of a Disability Champions Network. It now has around 60 members. The DEN was very enthusiastic about promoting that idea and challenging executives to get on board. We're hugely supported by our next executive disability champion, Paul O'Reilly, who took on an absolutely crucial role in turning the champions who were putting their hand up into an independent network that ran their own events, which I understand, Suzanne, you've presented at one of those. They are the key for me, the key highlights of that 3 years of being the DEN champion.
Thank you, Michael. A lot of stuff right there. A lot of things happened. Thank you. And then handball to you, Jackie.
Hi, Suzanne. How you going? So with the role as a DEN chair, so I took over from Michael for the chair of the Disability Employee Network in DCJ in March of this year. It's been a very interesting year to try to, evoke some change within the organisation through a very tumultuous time. But DCJ has been really committed to, supporting inclusion and particularly disability inclusion within the department. And we've really seen the network grow from not just being an employee network where we get together and have events, but we're actually embedding ourselves into the business and really integrating the DEN as part of the department. It's been a very interesting ride. With Michael's leadership, he really developed a lot of change and really got the change champions basically on board, which has really supports people with disabilities and employees with disabilities. So it's a fantastic journey, and at the moment, the commitment to a full-time role in particular is really, really important. Michael was able to be supported as the previous DEN chair to concentrate on the work about disability inclusion, and DCJ have really valued that, and they have given me opportunity to do the same, which really does show the commitment that DCJ has and the trust and support they have within the network. They are very committed to embedding the DEN into the organisation as well, and the support comes from the top down. From the Premier's priority to increasing people with disability who are employed in the public service to 5.6% by 2025 is a real driver and a driving force for public sector organisations in New South Wales. We have a really supportive secretary, Michael Coutts-Trotter, who really champions disability and disability inclusion. And the executive leadership, the roundtable that Michael spoke about was so instrumental in developing that change and evoking an emotional response and supporting, just getting executives to think about, and personalize and really connect with people they would never connect to. And I was one of those people who talked about my journey within DCJ with someone who has a disability, and it was very liberating. And it really the people that actually presented there, it really showed that there was a lot of support for us, and we've been able to continue and promote that support throughout DCJ, and our membership has grown as a result. I'm able to, being full-time in the role, I'm able to concentrate on developing the relationships with the stakeholders, in particular those executives, but also different parts of the organisation. We went from being family and community services to encompassing justice as well in the machinery of government last year, which completely changed the way we, our structure and the way we do things. So it's been, really key to develop and link in with those different divisions and really promote and support inclusion, and really, demonstrate the commitment that DCJ has
Thanks, Jackie.
within the public service.
That's terrific. It's a great story. Thank you so much for telling us about that. So while we're still got our focus on public sector, I might turn to Duncan from Victoria. I'm not saying that Victoria and New South Wales are competitive states in Australia. I'm not saying that at all. But the Victorian state government have taken a slightly different approach with developing an enablers network across the public sector. So really keen to hear from you, Duncan, about the mission and the purpose across that Victorian state government, and to say we look on your work with great admiration. Sorry, Duncan, you're on mute.
So there's always somebody who has on some sort of mute and takes the moment to take themselves off. So the Enablers Network is really started as a grassroots operation way back in 2016, just by 3 people sitting around a table talking about, wouldn't it be great if there was an employee network in the Victorian Public Service like the Pride Network, but for people with a disability. Fortunately, those words between those 3 people became action, and then the action sort of gained momentum, and then that momentum got the attention of our senior leaders, and with that came the credibility. And sort of in the time since, our purpose is now enshrined in our charter, and that is really just firstly is to support and to advance, the equity, the equality, accessibility and inclusion for people with disability, and also for carers who are working in the Victorian public sector, and also around supporting the Victorian government departments and agencies to become better leading disability confident employers.
Now you're on mute, aren't you, Susan?
I am. Oh dear. So here we go again. So what about the impact so far of the Enablers Network? Can you point to a couple of things that you think are the big wins?
Certainly. They're quite intangible, but nonetheless very important. So I think the first and foremost, it would be around visibility. So the profile of disability in the Victorian public sector has certainly come a long way. How disability is understood by people has gone from a vague and nebulous concept of people in wheelchairs or with white canes to a very broad and deep understanding of a range of health conditions that impact people in different ways. Second, I'd say it would be our collective strength. And this is due to the wide and I'd say very thin distribution of people with disabilities across the public sector. It's quite common that you could be, for any person with a disability to be at their workstation in whatever department that they're in and actually not know any other person with a disability. especially if you're in one of the larger agencies like the Department of Education and Training where I'm based. Also, I would mention that the timing of COVID was interesting in that we're still maturing as a network, but the call to action from our members was very strong and very loud. The message from government was that we're all into this together, but it's important to understand that we all not have been affected equally, and that people with disability are likely to be and have been disproportionately affected. An example of this would be the introduction around the mandatory face masks and coverings in Victoria during our second wave, which you all know about. But the reaction was immediate, especially from people with respiratory conditions, but the strongest was certainly from the deaf and hard of hearing community. The policy and the communication advisors really didn't understand the daily lived experience, and it really showed in the advice that we read. And it took the collective enablers network, and also with the support of Deaf Victoria, to advocate for inclusive considerations and respond to the pandemic. And this is only just one example of the many things that we've been doing, but this particular moment was probably the catalyst for our continued work in the response to the pandemic and our transition to the COVID normal workplace and whatever that might look like in the future.
Yes, so you're a very important vehicle for feedback, and you can do that in a very prompt and responsive way. So I think that's very valuable, particularly this year where there are ill-considered consequences of various decisions. So thank you, that's very insightful. And so Paul, the Ability Network at EY spans Oceania. Tell us how you do that, because that means you're operating across several time zones, and the kind of work that you've been doing at EY to make it easier for employees with disability to achieve their potential.
Sure. Well, you're right. We have the pleasure of being kind of spanning across all of Oceania, which incorporates quite a lot of people in lots of different places. And I guess what we've done with our Ability Network is to take EY's bigger picture approach to inclusion, which is around creating environments of inclusion and belonging for everybody, and then make it meaningful specifically to us and our environment here in Oceania. So we built a strategy which is to celebrate, to educate and to activate. Whilst we do get involved with things like the systemic issues like workplace accessibility, our primary focus really though is on the raising the topic of disability as a conversation and inviting people to challenge their preconceptions. And I think what we try to do is we will celebrate the strength that comes from the huge breadth of differences that span disability. We educate people on what the differences mean on a day-to-day basis. And we then try to activate the passions of the people with disabilities, the carers of those with disabilities, the allies that within the network, and through various different kind of projects and initiatives throughout the year. So some of the things that we do to from a high level to address.
Fantastic. I think we are almost running out of time, but I want to pick up on the main theme that have come from all of you, and that is that the role of employee networks is to be change makers, is to elevate the conversation so that the people who can change the life chances, change the workplace experience of people with disability, hear that feedback and get a deeper understanding of what it's like to need to do things differently, and to make sure that those considerations are given. We have just a few minutes left, and I just wonder whether you could, in a one very short sentence, each describe your proudest moment. What is the thing that you're you're most proud of? And Michael?
Really, the guidance and action team. That given me more confidence about having an effective den. The traditional approach of having one chairperson and everything falls on them, and a secretary, that wasn't working for us. So getting together 14 people with a variety of disabilities, with a variety of experiences in the workplace, it's created an enduring capacity for an ongoing demand for change. And I think that to me is the thing that I feel proudest about.
Thank you so much, Michael. Jackie?
Yeah, just echoing from Michael, you know, definitely the structure of the Den leadership and developing the Den to be a team and an active team that supports one another. Because it, like Michael said, it doesn't shouldn't wholly and solely be responsible for one person or to one person. But my proudest moment as Den chair is integrating the Den into the business, so that we are not just a network, we are a movement, and a movement of change. And definitely that would be my most proudest moment.
That is very powerful, to go from being something that's a concept to a movement. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of the work that DCJ has done, and so pleased to have been a small part of that journey. Duncan. I think you're still on mute, Duncan.
Thank you.
So I think the one positive outcome from COVID would be how it's raised the profile of mental health in organisations and also around the community. So I think a personal moment for me would be actually this year on World Mental Health Day on October 10th, where the employee networks across the Victorian public sector came together, and we actually had an event that sort of highlighted the intersectionality of mental health. So it was, you know, the Pride Network, the Career Staff Network. We also have a Women of Colour Network, an African Australian Network, and of course the Enablers Network. And that event, I sort of, you know, shared my personal story of growing up a mixed race person, migrant from, and also my story, actually how I acquired my disability through cancer, and then the rehabilitative process and landing in the VPS, and sharing that with, you know, with the entire sector, and got a great response from all the stories that were shared as well.
Thank you. I'm sure that was very powerful and in a way liberating for you to share that story. So congratulations, and I think welcoming intersectionality and engaging with other employee networks is such a great thing to do, because we are all in this together. Thank you, Duncan. Paul, tell us about your proudest moment so far. I'm sure you've got many to come, but really fascinated to hear.
Yeah, honestly, there are too many almost to put on a list. There are individual moments of pride that I have around specific people who have stood up and taken charge of certain things. There's group elements of pride, but I think for me, I would say taking the network from kind of a 200-person passive email distribution list to a network of 700+ people who are engaged, who are talking, who are comfortable, more comfortable talking about their experiences and about their views on disability, and being able to see, for example, recently we put a call out for people to share their stories, as Duncan was kind of talking about, for International Day of People with Disability, and we have people who are emerging as role models from places we would not have expected. We've had people taking personal ownership over things like making Auslan classes accessible for everybody across Australia, previously in person and now virtually, all off their own back, but done through the facilitation and the, I guess, the confidence that's given by being part of the network. So those are probably the things that have made me most proud.
Wow. There's a lot of change that each of you have talked about today, and I really thank you so much for in being able to share your story with other organisations who are on this journey. I am, from my 27 years in working in the area of employment of people with disability and working with employers, I have come to know that the most important thing is hearing from the voices of people with disability and raising those voices so that we can have a shared experience and a shared reality that then can create an experience and a reality for everyone to create the realisation of people's full career potential, and in doing so reach personal engagement and personal empowerment that would not be possible without bringing your whole self to work. So I sincerely thank you so much for your time today, and wish each of you the absolute best to celebrate International Day of People with Disability. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks very
Suzanne.
much.
Thank you.